Greetings, let's get this thing on the road. Viewer requested topics. I got dozens, so I have a ton to get through. I'm going to be extremely lazy with audio and video editing, obviously. Just showing the script bits I'm reading so you can follow along me stumbling over my own words, and showing a relevant picture in the corner there. Lazy, but still better than most vlogs that show entirely irrelevant gameplay footage. I'm splitting them up in three categories, those about me, about Sonic, and the rest. There's a ridiculous amount of work, so it'll just be an anecdote, fading that my general opinion, or apologizing, I have no idea what you're talking about. And those requests that would take way too long, well, maybe I do them in the future, but obviously with dozens and dozens of requests, I'm not going to study and talk about an entire TV show in depth or something. Keeping it short unless it's requested really often and super relevant. Oh god, I regret doing this thing. Okay, here we go. I will pronounce all your names wrong because 5 million things to pronounce in a couple of days, so... The Sonic topics. Game Lord, dissect the elemental shields and wisp Sonic games, talk about which is the best Sonic long run. Well, depends on how they're utilized. Shields usually feel more fluent in gameplay. You knock open a monitor and bam, you got the additional powers without a beat. Well, with Wisp you get the transformation animation, often you change shape and the whole pace of the game is changed. Shields are usually way more optional, just a cool extra thing to give you more options and make the level a little easier, while Wisps are way more deliberate and necessary tools to traverse through a puzzle or challenge. It really depends on what kind of Sonic game you're going for. If you want to keep the rhythm going, have it about empowerment, options, freedom, then Shields it is. Prefer a more clean designed Sonic with more obvious challenges and specifically laid down tasks than Wisps. I prefer Shields myself. David the Sloth 5, I would like to hear your opinion about the relation between Sonic games and Sonic shows. So much Sonic Boom. Bloop. That's a little broad. Ignoring fans, as far as game creators go, it seems Underground CTM and AOSDH operated entirely in their own little corner of the world, especially since Sega of Japan did like working with Sega of America. Sonic X, on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised that when that show was designed and when they were discussing the basics of the show at the beginning, the game creators were inspired by some of the decisions to work it into the games, especially simplifying the personalities of the characters. But after the initial design of the TV show, I doubt the game makers really took much from Sonic X. Okay, several more people asked me to talk about the TV shows in the Archie comic book. Way too much to go into, maybe in the future Dissected. For now, super fast, the wacky Sonic cartoon show, loved as a kid, I can take it or leave it now. I prefer it over Sonic Boom, to be honest, has way more energy and heart to it. The serious Sonic cartoon, loved as a kid, really like it now. First season is kind of weird and more emotional, second season is where it really picks up. Argh comics, never saw them, only from a distance, so they had a faraway mystical quality to me as a kid. Because of that, I always have been a little too intimidated to get into it. Started to read some for a potential Ken Penders Dissected down the line, that's requested a lot. British comics, I read a couple issues that were randomly released in the Netherlands. Art is cool, but the story is incomprehensible to me. I always suspected it had severe translation issues because the dialogue was really weird. Sonic Underground, never watched it, so can't say. Sonic X, hated it when it came out. I grew more attached and positive toward its sins. Fantastic sense of humor, has problems, but some real value too. Might talk about it in depth in the future. Sonic Boom, well, I talked a lot about that. It has potential, but fails to live up to it. Occasionally funny jokes, but the lack of energy really hurts it as a Sonic cartoon. That's as far as I'm willing to dive into the TV shows and comics for this video. Maybe in the future, got a million other things to talk about. So, Kirby Smith 64, I would love a Gamma Dissected or an Omega Dissected. Also, Richard Graham asked for the robots. Omega, it took me a long time to warm up to him. I'm not a fan of robots or robot voices, although they started to take him when they started to take him on in more comedic ways, I started to see the potential. Either way, Team Dark in its construction is kind of fascinating. I mean, you have Shadow, who's constantly doubting his identity, stuck between good and evil. Then you have Omega, who's a complete violent psychopath. And then there's Rouge, who's more about peace and cooperation and working with allies. So it's like Rouge and Omega are like the angel and devil on Shadow's shoulders. Ah, Wild Sonic, what should I do? Befriend him. Make him do your bidding. Meatbags must be destroyed. Gamma, I always wondered how to approach his death scene. Like, was Gamma's identity the robot itself who committed suicide to release the bird, or was the bird itself always in control and just shed its robot armor? That makes it less tragic. But that would make it more hilarious when you start to think about Omega, because that means all Omega's bravado and aggression comes from a tiny bird inside. You know, I love the idea of some pissed off Rambo bird controlling Omega. I have evolved to a superior robot being. All weaklings must be destroyed. Obey me. Tweety the bird. I mean Omega. Charlotte, ML, what are your thoughts on Supersonic being used as a writing get-out-of-jail-free card as opposed to his evil deranged version of the Fleetway comic? Anyway, Supersonic as free-out-of-jail card? When did that happen? Usually Supersonic is genuinely being built up. The only free-out-of-jail moment was in Sonic Adventure when there's suddenly a negative and positive side energy charge, just so they can have the Supersonic fight against an also Emerald charged opponent. That was kind of cheap, but whatever. Other than that, Supersonic never felt like a cheat to me. Although it's true that it gets a little boring, that it always ends with a Supersonic fight, or at least used to end. Really Japanese, like how Sailor Moon or Power Rangers always end with the same finishing move. Would be nice if they tried something creative with it, which so far never happened. Even when there's a story ending without Supersonic, it doesn't feel like a subversion or a twist or anything special. Lost World or Colors might have well ended on a Supersonic fight for all that matters. Just feels like they just forgot. That said, I love to see them do something like the Fleetway comic when using the Gale's Emerald corrupts your brain and makes you go mad. The potential madness of Gale's energy going crazy is a story topic begging to be used. If that will ever happen in the plot, I think the American writers will most likely to do it. Pontic and Graf so far ignored doing anything with emeralds, but I see them trying to play around with the concept more than I would see the Japanese writers ever use it. Because I rarely, if ever, see Japanese writers really challenge the core theme of their show or story. I don't think I ever saw, like, Pokemon wondering if forcing Pokemon to fight is a bad idea, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters question their reliance to solve everything with cards. The hero's skills are so symbolically ingrained into the story that it's just natural and no one ever questions it. And I kind of think that Japanese writers see Supersonic like that too. Not to be taken literally, but just a manifestation of Sonic's inner emotions and strength. It's more an American thing to question the structure or the thematic elements of your show. Only problem with Pontic and Graf is that while there's a very high chance they'll bring it up someday as an idea, there's only a very small chance to do anything interesting with it, so it'll probably just be a wink-wink moment to the audience.
I'd like to see you talk about Sonic the comic. I've only read a few issues because I got into it near its end, but it has been archived online and has been continued as a webcomic. What's different from the American Archie comics is that it can be somewhat dark in places. Sonic would act a bit ruder towards Tails, and I had a character killed off. Also, Eggman was a pretty sinister villain in the comic, with a sidekick named Grimer, who is a scientist working for him. You also have a character called Short Fuse the Cybernick, who is a roboticized squirrel who turns against Robotnik and has his own agenda for taking him down. Also, as I read the comic before I played Sonic Adventure, it had its own adaptation, and they fleshed out Chaos with a really big backstory and personality. What I really like about Sonic the comic though, is that they took Super Sonic and made him into Sonic's own dark side, his id, his own Mr. Hyde or Incredible Hulk. I like the idea of Sonic fighting a twisted, more powerful version of himself, and wanted to see that in the games. I think the closest we have is Metal Sonic, and probably Shadow before his face heel turn in Adventure 2.
XCat25, probably Sonic fandom's weirdest fandom. I want to talk about weird Sonic fandom, because Sonic fandom weird, and weird porn-related stuff for weird Sonic fandom that's weird. Also, video game Freak 13 and some other people I'm too lazy to look up also ask for this, and Godforth asking particularly about muscle art, not necessarily porn, but I'll throw it in here anyway. Porn, one of the most requested topics of the whole bunch. You sure your username isn't XXCat25? Whatever. First of all, let's not underestimate the vast amount of Mario and Pokemon porn out there before this becomes a Sega versus Nintendo thing again. As it happens, I am working on a Dissected for a long time, going on about the psychological effects of cartoons and anthros, and I was hesitating or not to go into the porn aspect of it. I guess you guys wanted, so. With the risk of sabotaging and stealing the thunder of a later video, not to mention throwing you guys into Chapter 27 without all the setup and context building it would have required, here's the gist. It'll take a while, but I'm not sure if I can simplify this much. It's a complicated topic. Now, this is my personal crackpot theory, and let I make it very clear that this is just me trying to figure out the world, and I'm not saying this in any capacity as a professional psychologist or someone who studied this, but in my full capacity as fat, stupid Roger, I think the key to being attracted to cartoons, anthros, and how they're often made huge or muscular and all those fetishes has to do with how you look at human beings. Like the quote-unquote normal way to look at people, subconsciously that is, what the brain does without you really thinking about it is assessing their worth. You see a person, you see their race, their age, their wealth, their clothes, their health, how good they take care of themselves. Every detail about your body is connected to a consequence, to a worth, to what it means. You look at me and I have a scruffy beard, I'm overweight, cheap clothes, so you come to conclusions about what kind of person I am, and more importantly, what that means to you. Am I dangerous? Am I useful? Could any interaction with me lead you to more power, money, business opportunities, sex, or death? This is the natural way how people look, particularly alpha people, those who have power, money, tons of sex, those who are successful in life. Businessmen, as you know, are all about that eye contact, firm handshakes, carefully picked wardrobes, every microscopic detail carefully planned to communicate their personality, or at least what they want people to think their personality is. Those at the top of the game are attracted to those aspects. You looking healthy, strong, powerful, that makes you attractive for the elite, sexually or not, whatever. Good for them. However, not everyone can compete against the elite. There's not enough room for everyone at the top, so there's an alternative way. I think that a lot of people who spend several generations a bit lower on the human food chain, that their brains have come up with an alternative way to assess people. Not so much focus on consequences and direct power and strength, but more on the personality. After all, you can't have the strongest cavemen and women of your tribe to survive, and have to do with the less attractive people. So looking at their personalities is a secondary option to find a partner who can increase your chance of survival. So now you look at people in a more abstract, symbolic way. Now cartoons are all about abstracting the human figure. Cartoons is all about creating a personality, a soul out of visual cues. There's no real body mass, no evidence of age, race, or physical fitness or wealth. It's just a bunch of artificial constructed lines and shapes. So all the properties a cartoon has all symbolically represent their soul. They don't have a real physical bodies, real items they assess their worth from. Instead, they're made out of visual cues. Because trust me, there is a real science behind how cartoons are constructed. Look at this design. Everything about that character is carefully constructed to emulate all kinds of visual cues that communicate an idea, a personality, a soul. I think that people who are sexually attracted to cartoons most likely have their brains programmed to kind of sidestep the natural process of getting attracted to people who are in a real context and are more trained to search for a soul. So with anthros, that's even stronger. Semi-realistic cartoons can be a bridge between the two thought processes, but anthros, that's completely rejecting the real human body and constructing a personality entirely out of symbolic shapes. My guess is that this is why, when you dive deeper into the anthro world and get to the more extreme core of the whole thing, the people often are also very loose with them, as in like to mold and stretch and add strange properties to the characters to personify them even more, leading to the muscular art, the macro, the micro, the fuda, the whatever. After all, those characters aren't real, they just communicate a soul, so adding or changing a few properties to make their soul fit even closer to your personal taste just feels natural. Making them muscular, it gives their soul an extra spice, an extra direction, a personality that you already found interesting, now even more hitting that personality jackpot. Thing is, a lot of the more extremer anthro artists, I notice a lot of people struggling with their own identity and sexuality, right? Unhappy with their own body, whether it's muscular or fat or neither, not sure if they're a man or a woman, gay or straight. When you struggle with your own personal identity, to me, it makes sense that anthro art could be a weird solution or part of that, because that allows you to get attracted directly to someone's soul and personality without worrying specifically about gender, age, race, or anything. Go straight to the core of the human soul and ignore the parts of your body in the real world that gives you your identity crisis. Whether you're a man, woman, old, young, or even vaguely realistic is irrelevant. The point is you're you. Which leads to the very interesting philosophical stance of whether being attracted to more abstract forms of the human form creates distance between you and the world, as you're distancing yourself from what's real, or that it actually brings you closer as it teaches your brain not to get caught up in irrelevant details and fluff, and instead connect straight into the mind of your fellow people. After all, you can say about furries what you want, but they're not loners. They have a very active social life. Oh my god, Roger, are you saying everyone who's into anthro art is a loser or someone screwed in the head, blah 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 blah? No. The world is complicated, things are never black and white, not to mention there's a gradual system from realistic art to cartoons to the more abstract. So it's not winners versus losers, more two different ideologies of how you can possibly tackle the world with many in-between steps and side branches. Something like that. That's my personal angle to this phenomenon. Not the truth, but at least a workable possibility or something. I don't know. Okay, next. John Doe, so Sonic social media dissected. Several other people also asked for that. I'm lazy. This has been requested so much. I'll make it a separate video very soon. I hear rumors there'll be a revelation today, April Fools, so I want to wait for that first. In the meantime, I'll post a link to a video from the True Sonic Spirit channel that I wrote, we'll let someone else voice act for me, where I explain a bit about why people are obsessed with the Sonic social media to begin with. Although that video is a little out of date, I changed my mind on some things, but of course still good, so just watch that video for now, and I'll give my new updated thoughts later. Do Cross 40 Dissected, huh? I'm not very good with music. I think they're older songs that are a nice mix between a more, how to call it, gruff and smoky American power rock combined with a little peppy upbeat G-pop. But the further you go into the Sonic games, the more the upbeat G-pop starts to disappear in their songs. And because of that, I'm not sure if they're still super suitable for any main themes for any games or cast. Though they're still a great band for the theme for a more intense side character like Shadow or Eggman. I love Johnny Gioli's, sorry for the mispronunciation. I love that guy's voice, especially in the Hallelujah, a song he sang outside of Cross 40. It really impressed me, I love the band, but they're kind of missing that upbeat element that really connected them to Sonic in the past. W. Robleski. First. Being first. It means you're lonely. Sorry, force of habits. Do Sonic Runners, please. Oh. Sonic Runners, fantastic game, but what a disaster with its handling of the money aspect. What a waste. But yeah, I like the game concept. Great idea for an arcade cell phone thingy. Terrible trailer for it, though. Sega really sucks in understanding how hype works. Don't put the simple free-to-play arcade game together with the classic games, man. Didn't you learn anything from Sonic 4? As for story and characters, it's very weird. It's, I don't know what to think. Thing is, at this point, I'm really tired of the external logic and the overbearing dad humor from this series. So on one hand, it's exciting to see a Sonic cutscene without the constant punchlines and desperate attempts to be clever. It's the characters just acting natural, which is kind of boring, but at this point, I'm so numb from all the bad comedy that boring is kind of relaxing. On the other hand, the game has such a weird and awkward handling of the elements of the Sonic series. In any normal circumstances, I wouldn't have minded any attention and just considered video game logic, just the game doing its thing for fan service. But in the context of the entire Sonic series losing its grip on context and just becoming an endless parade of meaningless fan service and external jokes, Sonic Runners seems right at home in that attitude, so I don't know. It really depends on Sonic's future. If future games will have a more solid story again, I'll consider Runners just a simple, non-canon playground for its universe. If the detached, sarcastic, external logic Sonic continues, I'll consider Sonic Runners part of the movement. But yeah, fun to play. Just as long as you don't want to unlock all characters, I guess. The Master of Entertainment. Predictions for Sonic Boom Season 2, maybe. Well, maybe we should put you in charge if you're the Master of Entertainment. Anyway, my prediction. Have you seen my Sonic Boom Roger fight cartoon? Now imagine the complete and utter exact opposite of that. That's my prediction.
About where rings and coins in games go. They go right up there. No, that'll be too disgusting. They get absorbed into their bodies, I suppose. Would be great if they figure out how to do that in real life. No more wallets or purses or backpacks. Just absorb everything you need into you and then pop it out. It better have a cool video game sound effect too. Also, I'm forced by internet law to mention the term hammerspace. So there you go. Hammerspace is what this concept is called.
Red Hatch 47. Oh, so many episodes of our show already. I think a piece on Ken Penders would be interesting. Yes, that would be very interesting. He'll get us dissected one day, but let me read some of his stories first, otherwise I just sound like an idiot. Mila Basset, is that French? Could be French. One, and only one, because two is a different topic, theme. Who are your favorite Sonic characters and why? I don't think I have any now, for two reasons. One, if there's one thing I learned from modern Sonic, is that it's hugely depending on who's writing as to how the characters are like. So my personal favorite character can become the worst character in a split second. And two, as a parody maker and such, who's my favorite character always depends on the context of what's going on, or what I'm writing or thinking about. In some situations, some characters are just perfect for the job. Like, one of my favorite jokes in Sonic X is one scene with Cream the Rabbit is having a conversation with an old lady, but that old lady is very forgetful and keeps going in circles with this conversation. Well, Cream is so hyper-polite and nice about it that she ignores it and keeps going along with it, resulting in that they're endlessly stuck in an eternal conversation that never ends. And that's such a wonderful and perfect moment, and largely because it's Cream, no other Sonic character would make that scene work. It has to be her. So yeah, each character has their own personality, and depending on the writer, and even more so depending on what's going on in the situation, that really depends on which character is perfect and awesome. All characters have potential to be my favorite character. It really depends on how they're used. I'm more a specific idea or joke person than really a character in general. But if I have to give a general answer, even then I'm cheating and saying it depends. I think Eggman has the potential to be the most awesome character, but almost no writers were ever capable of triggering the pure Eggman. They always either make him too standard generic villain or just a bumbling, drooling moron. A perfect Eggman needs to walk that tightrope of dangerous, terrifying psychopath and wacky, theatrical man-child. Whenever Sonic's a comedy, my favorite characters would always be the intense one, Shadow, Omega, Gun Commander Towers. At least when they're used intense and not boring. Whenever Sonic's trying to have a more layered story with twists and turns, I'm mostly looking for Rouge the Bat, especially when she's actually treated like a charming spy and not just lol boobs punchline. Rouge is a nice indicator that the story will have more layers going on. She's one of the more flexible characters. As a kid, Tails was my favorite character. Later on, I found Amy the most interesting because she had a whole I Want Something storyline to give this series more of a build-up to something, joined by Shadow later. But yeah, since Unleashed on, I don't really have a real personal favorite character anymore. All of them have a cool moment or two, and all of them have been dragged in deep layers of shit since. Really depends on the competency of the writers.
And why? Rouge the Bat, because she's got massive... she's got a cracking set of... she looks very nice. Knuckles, because I like his cool attitude, and I like making him fly over levels. And Dr. Eggman. He's a really great scientist, can be funny sometimes, and I like his moustache.
Olivia Henry, you should dissect Sonic's character, not only video games but media too. I've noticed changed in many ways. Each character shows a different spin. How much one or exactly is his character? Does Sega even have a character description of him that doesn't ever change? Oh great, talk about all 5 million interpretations of Sonic, huh? Well, the problem with him is he's supposed to represent cool, and cool is not really set in stone. It constantly changes, so other than that, I don't really have a quick answer to this. Maybe I could do a dissected about it once, the evolution of his as a personality, but in that case I probably want to wait until we know more about the upcoming game, so it's more interesting. So I'm sorry, kind of sidestepping your question. Sonic Kirby. Again, what's with Sonic and Kirby's together all the time? How about a dissection on what makes a good Sonic RPG? Like, for instance, shouldn't be designed like a Western RPG or more conventional RPG. I also like stands and Sonic Exodus by Nikon Aguamagna. Oh, sorry, guy. I can't pronounce your name. And his guts and, in quotes, is that supposed to be sarcastic? Sonic Super Dash, which is his ally, I think. Although I personally prefer Eastern RPGs, well, okay, only from the 90s and early 2000s, modern Eastern RPGs are freaking weird. I go with Western RPG, way more open and fluent and action and speed driven. Well, technically I would prefer Sonic Unleashed or Sonic Adventures level design approach to an RPG. But I guess if you make Sonic an RPG, it's better to take use of that to do something that platform games never could, and take it to a more open-world approach that wouldn't work for the platformer, but would be neat for an RPG. So more an Assassin's Creed 2 style world, I guess. several themed large maps with occasional more cleanly designed dungeons. Although one worry I have with Western RPGs is that the art style is always very samey. Little color, little variation, just one big brownish mud place. With Sonic, I feel the environments should have a lot of variations in weirdness and color contrasts and stuff. And especially since in an open world RPG you'll be running around the same environments a lot anyway, so I guess they can afford to throw in more unique details than you could do in more linear levels. Oh yeah. If they asked me to design the RPG, it'd be like a combination between Sonic Adventure and Sonic Unleashed, mixed with Sonic Battle's fighting system. Like the game plays like an open platform level, but whenever you touch an enemy, it warps to this battle screen, kind of like Paper Mario does. But yeah, probably too close to games we already had, so to set it apart, a more open world approach would work better, maybe. It would be nice to have Sonic really unleashed into the world. No more corridors or level structures or limitations, just a big chunk of the universe to bounce around in as you please. Then Sonic Exodus, not really an RPG, but whatever. Haven't played it. There's no playable demo out yet, is there? Anyway, super interesting to see classic Sonic's pinball physics worked into it, and really curious how that will work in a 3D game. Never saw that before. Level design looks about the style I like in a 3D game, so it should be alright. So, everything's good about the project so far, looking forward to it. Only shame about the art design, but considering the small team working on it can be helped. It's mostly recycled stuff from the game designing program, I assume. No idea how complicated it is to change the texture of 3D models. I would like to try drawing level textures myself one day. Then again, I'm too intimidated by the thought that textures often have to be very specifically calculated to perfectly fit around a model, and it isn't just a matter of drawing material, so I'll probably screw it up. Whatever. True Blue Fuse, big fishing adventure free Dissected. Check the video I made on True Sonic channel about it. That can count as a Dissected, I'll link it. As for the weird big game released on April Fool's Day that happened after the question was asked, so I assume that's not relevant now. Full Coast, was Sonic Colors a necessary evil? Definitely, it was the right game at the right place. People wanted a more straightforward, relaxing, light game. After 06 and Unleashed were way too bloated and weird. We needed a change of pace and a focus on pure platforming. The general concept of Colors is great and exactly what Sonic needed at the time. Of course, I still hate the specific execution of it, but that's a different story. Nintendix, I'd like to hear you touch on something you've mentioned in old Sonic Dissected videos. The perfect Sonic game. You've mentioned it as the game that the series has yet to achieve, as there really isn't a game that fans would unanimously consider the best Sonic game. Also, Jim Man 117 asked me something like that. The ultimate Sonic game, oh boy. Before I start, two things. One, the ultimate best Sonic game does not exist and never will. The fanbase is too hopelessly shattered. Two, people making bold statements about how they know how to fix Sonic games and make a game everyone will like are often idiots just pushing their own personal agenda, not to mention completely ignore the games that actually did follow their instructions but failed. Thing with Sega is they do listen to fans and follow a lot of their advice. A lot of the time they just always do it in the most boneheaded way possible. So, with the risk of also becoming one of those bold statement idiots, yeah, see, this is why I would personally never make a statement that I'll explain how a good Sonic game should be, but I guess I have to do now. Oh well, now it's at least hidden away in the middle of a long-winded video everyone will fall asleep in before finishing it, so instead of a big clickbait video, I guess I can jump on my soapbox now. If Sega ever loses their minds, and for whatever reason puts me in charge of the next Sonic game, here's my thought process. First, I think the key to Sonic's problem is that Sonic, and most Sega franchises in general, work as quick 2-hour action-packed games the most. It's as soon as Sega has to try and figure out how to upgrade Sonic into an enormous 60-hour game epic that the problems begin. So that's the first hurdle to overcome. Sonic fans have no tolerance for any bullshit. They want the game pure and fast. Making a game of Sonic's intensity going on for more than 2 hours and keep its purity intact is nearly impossible. My solution? Level editor. Yes. What better way to increase the game length by making the fans do it? After all, Sonic fans love making fan games already. Now, immediately everyone will look at Mario Maker. And no, not like Mario. And no, I don't want it to be like Mario Maker. Unlike Mario, I don't think Sonic fans will tolerate a game that's just a utility. They want a main experience. So less Mario Maker, that's all about its editor. And more like Jazz Jackrabbit 2 or Mod Nation Racer or Worms or whatever, games that have a very real core single-player campaign with the level editor as a toy to play with after main course. Not the main experience, but a main experience. Developing a level editor is very much a long-term investment. It will take a long time to get all the editor working and customer-friendly, but as soon as you overcome that hurdle, making a main game should go faster and more efficient than usual. Now, the game itself. As I said before, problem is that Sonic games always focus on one core style of fans. I prefer to pick up what Sonic Generations try to do and pick and choose elements from Sonic's entire history and mix that up in a nice bowl. As for the gameplay, take the pinball physics in the sense of master the game to become a game-breaking badass attitude from the classic games. Make people work for their badass powers. From the Adventure era, take the cinematic elements, perhaps Adventure 2's grinding mechanics, from Sonic Advance to the boost. So not boost by pressing a button, but boost you earn by running at full speed without being interrupted, to honor the classic game's philosophy, and because it's clear, giving people the ability to boost by just pressing a button just makes them too stupid to play the games. No. When a level is a big open chunk of stage, boost will automatically start and you start running. And when the stronger platform sections start, your boost is interrupted and you'll be forced to take it slower. And those players who master the levels can try to find a secret route to bypass the platform sections and boosting like a badass. So, and then from the modern era, use the parkour elements to make Sonic more interactive and stable with his environment. Then, the Eternal War, 2D versus 3D. I think I would go with that, what the first Pac-Man World game and the most recent Mario games are doing, 3D but with a centered camera. It has the advantage of the immersion of the 3D games but keeping the speed and clarity of visuals from the 2D games, not to mention it sets the game apart from Mario Maker, and it will let people in the level editor decide for themselves if they design the level to work more with 3D or 2D. The visuals, what I like in Sonic the most in terms of graphics is the contrast. I want contrast, like that every level aesthetic always has an element of the mundane, an element of macho, and an element of the fantasy elements into it. For example, a stage set in a science facility. The mundane creates context. The offices, the big tarmac test grounds, the general building, so you know what's going on. Then the macho, there's Mythbuster style testing going on with big lasers and rockets and flamethrowers, causing all kinds of level set pieces. And then the fantasy, the deeper you go into the science lab, the crazier it becomes with colorful, deadly goo on the ground, test subjects and abstract machinery and organic matter. Those create level structures. Look at the world like how a child would. For example, those rich cities in the desert, Dubai stuff. They have like golf courses and swimming pools on their rooftops. Imagine you see this as a child. Wouldn't you imagine an entire weird video game level out of all that stuff? You're jumping on city rooftops and there's these midget golf course parts and swimming slide things reaching between the rooftops like a typical Sonic stage. Mundane city, fantasy corruption of the city, throw-ins on helicopters flying and a building tumbling over, and you got the macho constant contrast. Say, there's a level in the snow. It's depressing to look at, black and white, harsh, grey, big flakes of snow, you can't see much, the music is miserable. There's constantly this timer running down, like as if Sonic's drowning, except he's freezing to death. However, beneath the snow surface, there's this bright-colored magical kingdom hidden beneath the ice, all warm and glowing, and more upbeat music playing. If you're here, the timer stops, Sonic is safe, but there's constant Eggman robots down there that throw you back up into the snowstorm. It's like a reverse water stage. Instead of trying to stick to the surface and being forced to the bottom of the water all the time, now you want to get down to the underground hidden kingdom, while constantly forced back up to the surface where you're freezing. I love stages like in Sonic Colors, where you have the lush green fields with the red hunking factory in the middle. Sonic After Sequel had a better level like that. Lush jungle with this oily, gritty red factory in the middle. Fantastic contrast, I love it. Stuff like that. And then the story. Again, take elements from all Sonic's era. All Sonic eras. The brevity and interactivity of the classic era, have the cutscenes snappy to the point and work them naturally in the levels whenever possible. The lore and action energy from the adventure games, even when there's view and short cutscenes, doesn't mean you can pack them to the brim with action and background detail and make the world alive. And the lighthearted nature of the modern games, not the damn sarcastic detachment. Willingness to have fun with the universe and play characters for a laugh is good, as long as it never betrays the lore and action. Basically what this means is that I keep the core story very simple. Eggman stole something, stop him, whatever. Instead, the real interest of the story comes from individual set pieces and complications during the levels. For example, the science facility stage I talked about. Let's say that stage starts with a 10-second cutscene of Eggman hiring the Babylon rogues to steal an important artifact. Short and brief, enough to give an idea of their personality. Storm likes violence, Jet is greedy, Wave is tinkering with stuff. They're off to steal an artifact. Okay, established, level starts. Then constantly during the levels, shit starts happening, kinda like how Knuckles constantly interrupted the game in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. You see Wave in the background activating machine, and suddenly alarms go off, robots appear, trapped and door opens, machinery is activated, stuff happens. Storm shows up like a quick mid-level boss. When you get to the room with the artifact, you get into a Sonic Rival Sonic CD style race with Jet to protect the artifact, until the Babylon Rogue Zeppelin shows up at the end as the full level boss. Constantly fuck with the audience. Use in-jokes, but then really use them. Like, don't just put something like a Tails doll in there and make Sonic go, ooh, he makes me feel nervous. Get it, audience? Wink, 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 wink. Use Tails doll. Like, let's say in an early stage, Tails doll is like a simple boss. You kick his ass, no problem. Good. A couple zones later, he shows up again, but broken up like the Terminator with the circuitry showing through his face. And now he's an indestructible, and you have to knock him off a cliff. Then many zones later, yet again, you climb down and wander down in the swamps, and it seems when Tails doll fell down off the cliff, he landed in the swamp and now absorbed the wildlife and turned into some monstrosities, a swamp tree monster thing. Like, use them. So it isn't just an in-joke for nerds, but even newcomers who don't know what Tails doll is yet will be firmly reminded why he has the reputation that he has. And have a sense of humor, of course. Let's say we go to Eggman Land, except now it's actually a theme park with attractions. One level section takes place in it's a small world after all, right? But instead of celebrating the cultures around the world, you see all cultures of Sonic's universe all represented by just everyone worshipping Eggman. Spagonia, people on their knees kneeling before Eggman. Soliana, people on their knees kneeling before Eggman. Lost Hex, Zeddy on their knees kneeling before Eggman. All with the dumb music playing in the background. It's like a background joke, so not too intrusive. It's silly and wacky on the surface, but it also has dark implications beneath the surface. It reminds the audience that yes, if Eggman wins in this adventure, people will lose their culture and their identity and just become mindless slaves for Eggman. So despite it being wacky, it still empathizes that Eggman is dangerous and needs to be stopped. Bam, that's how you use your jokes with Eggman. My point is, use the lore. Use it. Don't just reference it, use it. So I don't want to see a level like Green Hill Zone and everyone just going, hey, remember Green Hill Zone? Wink, wink, wink. No, if you're going to use Green Hill Zone, then use it. Make Sonic actually visit South Island after a decade after the first adventure. The vegetation is more intense, you reach Scrap Brain Zone, but Scrap Brain Zone is no longer in use, power is down, plants have overgrown it. The trapdoor that sends Sonic tumbling to the labyrinth activates for a jump scare, but it malfunctions and Sonic stays up. And you see the broken remains of the final boss. It's quiet. Something moves. Is Eggman there? Suddenly the contraption of the final boss starts shaking and moving around, and holy shit, it's Tails doll again. He overtook the contraption, is taking it over, and now you have to play an extreme version of the final boss again. Whoa! Now, this means that the level editor needs to be able to do more than just create an obstacle course. It needs to have those interactive events and mini cutscenes and crazy bosses in there as well. So it'd be way more complicated to program than Mario Maker. Although I remember the Jazz Jackrabbit 2 level editor also being able to handle some of those, trigger events, elements into it. But yeah, it will be overambitious, dangerous, and then Sega will force the game late into development to become a Nintendo NX exclusive, and then I have to change the engine, and the game will become a buggy mess. And then I misspell one of the words in a 5,000-page manual, and that one misspelling becomes an internet meme that overtakes the entire game's reputation, and I'll be fired, and Sega goes broke, and everyone will be miserable, and that's the tragic end of my imaginary career as game developer. Whew. Where was I? Alright, dissecting. True Blue Fuse, having more requests. Oh boy. Bad Sonic fanfics dissected. Concerning my own awkward history, I feel uncomfortable knocking other people's work. Sonic's playground for everyone, and they can do whatever they please. The professionals, on the other hand.
About Sonic characters' sexuality. Entirely depending on who's writing them. The official writers can't keep anything straight, and Freiberger even literally said canon doesn't exist about his own Sonic Boom TV show. Everything you come up with is just as canon and official as whatever the official writers do, apparently. So everyone is everything. Hooray!
Eggman's diet dissected sandwiches apparently. He eats too fast, and that makes it that it takes more time before your body registers itself as full. This makes it very likely he's still hungry after the sandwich and eat way too much of it. Sonic Chew Dissected. Ah, that wonderful time in your early teens when your brain is desperately trying to understand itself, the world around it, and its emotions. Sonic Chew is a wonderful look into the process of how the creator went through all of his emotions, dreams, wishes, and pop culture around him and mixes that up in a narrative that almost symbolically parallels his own journey to maturity in this complicated world. It's art. Sonic whatever in whatever minutes dissected. Well, check the Sonic Adventure 5 million minutes making of video for a sample. Sonic Dissected. Oh. I set out to be a neutral source of exploration of the Sonic universe, but have proven myself to be just as biased and bound to my taste as any other person, and I have failed in that regard. Now the show is entirely about just me exploring my art thoughts and emotions. You can learn the most of what a show is by its haters, and will have plenty of haters. Most are unlikely to talk about it and dismiss it either on my admittedly shoddy production values or my personal opinion by itself. However, what I figured from some of my opponents of the show is also that the state of mind and approach you have is key to liking it or not. People who hate my show are often very collected, very grounded, very to the point, businesslike about the facts. They want proof, evidence, want information to be real, which made me realize how organic my thinking is. I don't necessarily search for the truth, the correct way of thinking. I'm not about telling people what to say or to think. It's entirely about trying to understand why we think something's the truth or correct. So it's a much more unstable kind of thinking. I change my mind often. I like people telling me I'm wrong. I like to learn new things. I don't always uphold the conclusions I made in previous episode, so I can imagine following along is very messy and unstable. But that's who I am and how I approach the world. I fear that if you lock yourself up with lots of preconceived facts and a strict logic, you can trap yourself in. And the Sonic world and its fanbase are so organic and all over the place. If you go into it with this mental, this strict and unmovable set of principles and perspectives and truth, you just get into endless fights. Sonic stuff is approachable from so many angles and perspectives that to understand it, you have to be in a very free-thinking way of thinking, a very free-thinking style. So people tightly holding on to this rock-solid, this Sonic game is good, this is bad, this is good behavior, this is bad behavior, tend to hate my videos. And I tend to hate them, so that's good. Toad Lash. Okay, Roger, good ideas for you. One, talk about Sonic, the main character, portrayed and interact with each other in various games, TV shows, movies.
Answer to many different questions. Sorry, sounds too vast for a quick dissected.
It takes the voiceover far more seriously than any other video game franchise. Voice acting. How many video game series have had the same main character with a voice for over decades? Not many, are there? Mario, I guess, but he still has the same voice. Some characters like Mega Man never had a voice people liked to begin with, although I like his voice in Legends and later X games, but they all died before gaining much momentum. Lara Croft is one example, but never been deep enough with the fanbase to know if they had a reaction or not. Not to mention their voices really resemble each other. I don't know, there's nothing to compare with Sonic, is there? Solid Snake, his voice changed, but I don't remember much anger or backlash to that about it, other than from the voice actor himself. Then again, I don't really see much of the Metal Gear fan base. If anything, I think there's two reasons why Sonic's voice gets a strong reaction. One, because the earlier games had bad voice directing, so you get fans who entirely focus on just the sound of the voice or how it's utilized and are fighting over that. I always hated Jason's voice for Sonic. It sounds so unnatural. Until I watched some Sonic X episodes in English. He sounds amazing there. Whoa! So in the end, it was the voice direction I disliked and not Jason's voice. Same with when Ryan Drummond is attacked. It's often on things that weren't his fault, but just the awkwardness of the game itself. And two, the atmosphere and direction of the game, of the series, seems to change drastically whenever a new voice appears, intentional or not, but people tend to associate the voice with the direction, which is why I never dared to make a statement on Roger Gregg Smith's voice. I think he may sound awesome as Sonic, but other than his cameo on Wreck-It Ralph, the way he's written pisses me off in each adventure he's in, so I associate his voice too closely to the style and can't really get a nice neutral view of his voice. Martyville. 8-bit Sonic games dissected would be interesting since barely anyone knows about their existence, yes. Ah yes, the Game Gear games were actually my primary source of Sonic games through most of my youth, so I'm very close to them. Although not sure if there's much to talk about. Of course, they were always hopelessly trying to catch up with the main big games, although some of their alternative solutions to things they couldn't do are pretty awesome in their own right. I especially like how the 8-bit games' usage of vehicles and items, like minecarts and a Delta Flyer. The snowboard is way more interactive than the one in Sonic 3, and the submarine is just plain epic. Despite being on weaker hardware, they still strongly uphold what Sonic games are about. There's constant surprises, cool environments, set pieces, all kinds of stuff happening. Some ideas I love to see being used in a bigger Sonic game, like there's a stage based on Mecha Green Hill Zone, bringing in memories of that CTM show, of Eggman turning a landscape into a robotic nightmare version. Of course, the Sega Game Gear, or Sega Master System, couldn't really do much with this concept because of their limited power, but the idea is awesome. And a stage set on a blip, awesome. I'm really disappointed that Sonic Generations completely ditched the 8-bit games, especially with the music. The 8-bit games have amazing music. I take the 8-bit Labyrinth Zone over the 16-bit one every day. Especially the handheld generation. Especially in the handheld generations, that the latter era is all based on the DS games. Couldn't they just have the classic game era replaced with the 8-bit era, and the Dreamcast era replaced with the Game Boy Advance games? Oh well, I guess that would have been a bad idea considering those stages are literal recreations of the original level design, so I suppose that would make the Game Gear era ridiculously short. Although sometimes I wonder if the skateboard and the blimp in the rooftop change are references to the Sega Game Gear games. I'm not sure if I can really recommend the 8-bit games to a new audience now. They're usually very easy and short, except Sonic 2. Music is great though, and if you want to play Sonic on your 3DS, I would very much recommend downloading the Game Gear games over the Shattered Crystal game any day. Sonic 1 and Triple Trouble are my favorites, although I like them all. Well, not super happy with the Labyrinth level design of Tails' Adventure. And okay, Sonic Blast is really awkward, and Spinball can be very frustrating and make me break my Game Gear in frustration. Other than that, awesome. Love the Game Gear games, the Sega Master System. I'm all for them. Bote de Vries 1. Is dat Nederlands? Sonic.exe Dissected. I was wondering what you found of it, how it could be improved, especially with Sonic.exe to do as a Sonic villain. Shadow's too edgy for the fans, so let's put a psychopathic murderer in the gang. I suppose evil versions of Sonic are super popular, as long as they don't have a personality or much of a backstory. So who knows, maybe Sonic.exe will do better. No angst, no backstory, no humans, just death. As for me, I never understood Sonic.exe, or his appeal, or how he works. I'm not much of a horror guy. Corrupting a cartoon character into a violent psychopath only works for me if the character's either used to be completely pure, like the Teletubbies or Fluttershy, or, well, Cream the Rabbit, if you were want to approach it from Sonic's perspective. So you have an intense contrast. Purity corrupted. Something completely innocent being deadly can give a strong effect. Or I like it when the psychopathic behavior was already there, just hidden. Like, I love this joke from Family Guy. Wow, I don't say that very often. Where Elmer Fudd finally gets Bugs Bunny and horribly murders him. See, that works for me because it's not much of a stretch. Elmer Fudd, by all means, really is a hunter set out to kill Bugs and Daffy. He never succeeds because he's a dumb cartoon, but the sentiments are there. So watching a dark parody where he does murder Bugs is a natural extension of what he is. But then Sonic as a violent psychopath, that doesn't work on either level. Sonic's not pure and innocent enough, and that it's a contrast. Sonic's already a bit of a jerk, so it's not really a complete subversion. But Sonic is not the kind of jerk that, even operating on exaggerated dark corruption rules, would outright murder. The darkest I can imagine Sonic is more someone who's detached when someone is dying. Like Tails is already dying, and Sonic just stands there bored and making jokes about it. That at least seems like a mutation of Sonic's actual behavior, especially his detached, sarcastic Pontiac version. His constant joy in seeing his friends get hurt and boom, and especially his not giving a damn that Tails is screaming for help in a 90s movie. So sure, not caring that someone is dying at least feels like it fits Sonic. Again, from a dark, exaggerated mutation version of his personality. But outright killing? Nah, doesn't feel natural. So Sonic.exe never worked for me. Even horror still needs to make sense on some subconscious level for me.
future for the Sonic fanbase. They'll be around. Fan art is still going even for characters who haven't been seen in ages. Tons of fan games going. I don't see this stuff disappearing. In fact, I'm expecting the Sonic fanbase to completely overtake the official output sooner or later. That we stop paying attention to this and enjoy the fan games that keep getting better and better. And I can easily see even future Sonic porn comics having a better grasp on the story and characters than the official stories.
Adrian 2040 and Dissected of the Mario and Sonic and Olympic Games franchise. I only played the handheld games because I'm fascinated by their plots. Gameplay I'm disappointed by. Most gameplay are just cutscenes where you press a button on the right moment. I wish they were more like actual real minigames, like simple arcade games, not just button mash boredom. Maybe the main games are better, I don't know. So yeah, Awkward Story is fun, music is fantastic, the Dream events look very neat, the only reason why I might ever think of buying these games for the main console, but as far as I know, there's very little Dream events in each game, so it's not quite worth the main prize. Other than that, we're all just waiting for Mario and Sonic to have a platform game together. Anyway, they need each other. Sonic needs Mario's stability and quality control, Mario needs Sonic's passion for world building, characters and adventure. But every time I hear Nintendo talk about the idea, they balk that the series are too different to work together. Yeah, that's the freaking point of the crossover, but whatever. Okay, I could have sworn there was a request about talking about the fan games as well, but I can't find it. Maybe I should do a full-length video about that someday, but there's so many. Anyway, it's cool that almost every part of the Sonic universe has a game for it. Before and After sequel is the most well-known and successful follow-up to the classics. There's Sonic Classic, generic name, but that one has a lot of references and nods to the Game Gear games, although not in level design. Sonic Robo Blast 2, my favorite of the fan games. It's like if Sonic Jam's 3D stage was a whole game, or Sonic Adventure Sonic stages have their own game without the fluff. It's easy to make new levels for it, so there's tons of fan mods, some better than vanilla game. It even has a Mario Kart mod. Don't know why they're so obsessive with the Mario Kart brand, since Mario is indeed a playable character and Sonic has free racing series of his own, but whatever. So, Sonic Drift Racing 3, or heck, Sonic Riders 4, you can even use the hoverboards. Technically, it should also be able to of hosting Nights into Dreams mod concept, but I don't see anyone making levels for that yet. Sucks. Sonic World is a fantastic fan game to try if you want to evoke Sonic Adventure 2 or Sonic Heroes, the stages style. It's a bit hard to master, the gameplay is a little too strict and rigid right now, but once you master it, it is a fantastic evolution of the Sonic Heroes and the Sonic stages of Adventure 2. Heck, even the Knuckles stages from Sonic Adventure 2. There's also fan mods for it, but way less impressive than the main game, so I don't find those very interesting. There's several projects going on to salvage the better Sonic levels from 06 and remaster them, that's cool. Sonic Generations mod. People are working hard on Sonic Lost World levels, way more open and more interesting environments. Go figure, the fans immediately know way better how to utilize Sonic Lost World's worth than Sonic Team did. Tons of fan stuff still in the making. They're getting better and better. So one day we don't need Sega anymore. Hooray. Okay. Enough talking about Sonic. Time for the dozens and other themed topics. So like, subscribe, worship, engulf in gold, and make a statue of this video. And I'll see you next time, I guess. I need a drink.
Announce a new Sonic game Sonic Team would approve. Okay, here's a new game, Sonic in Drag. Because if you like the idea of Sonic as a werehog or Shadow having a gun, then you'll love seeing Sonic wearing a dress.
What kind? Lolita? Attractive? Nice thrills, Sonic. Where'd you get them? And Summers? I'll go now.